And greetings and welcome to the QCast. This is season 5, episode 18. We are well into the season now, and I'm just coming off the Great Lakes Invitational, as is my guest here in episode number 18, Pat McKenzie, the head men's basketball coach of the Johnnies of St. John's. Pat, I do promise that I've taken this off. I saw you in the airport, didn't know you'd be there. I had this on. I have it on again. It was off for several hours yesterday, but I had to wear it today. How are you doing? And thanks for joining me on the QCast, Pat.
Yeah, thanks for having me. And at St. John, it's hard to take off sometimes, so that's good. I'm glad you got the gear. Yeah, recovering a little bit from the trip. We're getting ready for practice this afternoon, but really appreciate you having me on.
Yeah, looking forward to it. I do worry sometimes that like as we get into the playoff season that like the Titans are going to be playing St. John's and people are going to have these photos of me out there, or like maybe we play Gettysburg and I've got their stuff in a pic. So hey, I'm going to wear gear that people send me unless I can't wear like WashU or Augustana stuff or Milliken, that kind of stuff. But St. John's, Gettysburg, I'm all in, guys. So Pat, it was an awesome weekend. And I wanted to start there with your impressions. Let's hold off on the games for a second, but the Great Lakes Invitational experience, because there's other coaches in your position that are probably going to be thinking about taking a phone call from Ryan Whitnable. Do they want to play in this? Talk about your impressions of the Great Lakes Invitational tournament itself.
Yeah, I mean, I don't know what more can be said. I know a lot of people have talked about it, but it is a great event. I mean, it's obviously the caliber of teams is pretty remarkable. It was well run. From the hotel setup, which was great. I think there were six of us staying there, and normally when you're at a hotel with a bunch of teams, you're on top of each other. That,
Right.
that wasn't the case at all. It was actually kind of fun being able to talk with some of the other coaches and players. Um, the venue. I mean, Calvin. That's my first time there,
Mine too.
and yeah, I mean, you've seen it on film, you hear about it. I mean, it's such a remarkable facility, and the people make the place, and they were just gracious hosts, and the whole thing was well run, and obviously credit to Ryan because he's put on, this brainchild of his has become quite an experience.
Yeah, kudos on all those fronts. It's first to Ryan for having the kind of the vision to do this. I think this was number 7, and just all the work it takes to make this happen. And spoiler alert: there's not any like revenue coming into Ryan from this. This is sort of a for the love of the game thing that he does. And I was blown away by Van Noord Arena. Like you, I've seen it on video like a million times, but when I walked in there, you walk in kind of that upper level, and the size of that thing is just blows you away that that's a D3 facility. You guys have a great facility. We have a great facility, but you walk in that thing and it's a pretty major arena, Pat, don't you think? Like it's a big place.
It is. It's something else. Yeah, I was taken aback, and it's in great shape. There's guys scrubbing the floor like it's an NBA game, running out after somebody falls down. I mean, the whole thing. It was
Right.
they do a great job. I don't know what else you can say about it. It was something else.
Let's talk about the games a little bit. So you go 1-1 there. You're sitting at 4-1 right now, by the way. So let's go through kind of the games. You've got a really nice win over Oshkosh in your opener. And Oshkosh is a team, as I was doing my ballot last night, boy, I almost pulled the trigger. I was like Augustana, Oshkosh, St. Thomas, Texas. They look really good to me. And I think somehow, did they get picked like at the bottom of the WIAC, some craziness, but they look really good to me. At Central, at Simpson, and then you get into your GLI games where you get Hope and Calvin. So let's first talk about that game against Hope. You win that one. Let's talk through that opening win on Friday at the GLI. What were your thoughts about that one?
Yeah, and I'll start with. Let me go back. Oshkosh is good. They don't just look good; they are good. They're
Right.
they're good, and I don't know how that league obviously is great. So who knows where they'll shake out? But they're good, and Matt's done a great job there. Um, sorry, the Hope. They're good. I mean, and I know they're down a guy. They got one of their starters back for us.
Right.
And if you watch, I mean, it was a rock fight between the two of us, and we were fortunate, I think, just down the stretch, to make a few more plays than they did, and we're fortunate to get out of that thing with a win.
Yeah, that Hope game, I thought you guys defensively looked incredible in that game. And I think my impression of your team, and we'll talk about this more as we get into the Calvin game, but I was trying to, while I was watching your team, I was trying to think like, who do these guys remind me of? And it took me like a half to realize you guys remind me of a Ron Rose Illinois Wesleyan team, and that you're deep. You play like 10 guys, and it's interchangeable parts. Like a guy comes in and he looks just like the other guy. You don't rely on any one guy necessarily. And I think because I'm used to watching that I really took to the style that you play, and you're a very physical defensive team. Just talk about the construction, Pat, of this group and how deep it is and how much they kind of gravitate to that defensive side of things.
Well, we're fortunate to have some depth. I mean, we've got a number of seniors, and everybody in the rotation played, double-digit minutes or more a year ago. So we did feel like coming in, we had some depth, and which is new. I mean, last year we played 10 guys, which I've never gone that deep. And that is sort of what we're trying to do, is just sort of find the right group on any given night. And we think we can play various groups together
Sure.
and sort of match what we need, or infuse with what guys' strengths are. Doesn't always work, obviously, but yeah, it's a fun group from that standpoint, and they bought into it. I mean, they really have. They're great guys. They don't care. They understand one night they might get 20, and the next night somebody else, or the minutes. And there's just not been an issue with that over the last 2 seasons, which I'm really fortunate to have guys that just kind of buy into that.
Yeah, really impressive group in the way they carry themselves and they play hard. And I think the words I used afterwards, kind of like a blue collar, defensive oriented group. They seem to play with a lot of toughness. And then that second night, you get Calvin. It's interesting. You end up with that Hope Calvin draw. And Calvin comes in 0-5. And I've seen them now play 4 games because I saw them play at the Sigma, where they had number 2 Platteville beat up 11 with a minute 30 left. They lose in this everything that could go wrong went wrong opener. They lose to Cal Lutheran. Then they lose, let's see, the 2 games I didn't see. They lost to Oshkosh in a game that they were up late, and they lost to Heidelberg in a close game. Obviously, then the night before in the GLI, they lose to Emory, who might be the best team in Division III. They lose to Emory in a game that they led late and had chances to win. I mean, coming into that game on their floor, 0-5. I mean, I remember thinking like they gotta win this game. They gotta win a game at some point. The stars have to align and they're gonna win. Did you feel any of that coming in? Like this is a really good 0-5 team.
Yeah, I mean, absolutely. You knew that on film, like you said. I mean, they're good, and they're still trying to figure out. They, as I understand it, have a pretty good player not playing.
Oh,
So they're a little bit of like, who are we without him, right? And that could take some time. And they're they can play with anybody. They've shown that so far. And then yeah, watching them play Emory, I mean, we kind of knew what we were getting into. And then the other, interesting dynamic with Hope Calvin, I think that first night, everybody in the gym was pulling for us
right,
because it's Hope.
right, right,
And then, the next night, everybody certainly was not. So
right.
it was kind of a fun dynamic to see those two teams out there. Obviously, didn't come out on the right end of it from our sake, but they're
It
good.
was their crowd was it was I'll use the word, it was emotional. Like this is a true statement, as Matt Snyder said, that towards the end when Calvin had it clinched, 30 seconds to go, he looked to his right and there was someone he knew that was crying, because it was such a like that 0-5 and such an emotional. I remember seeing Matt and Zach talk to Coach Saul a minute after the buzzer, and that was sort of an emotional like hug kind of thing. And so like you were playing in a crowd that was charged up and very much wanted that game, whereas most of the GLI games are kind of like empty-ish gym, total neutral court type games. I did think that the energy in the building helped Calvin along. Like, I don't know as a coach if that's something you feel, but as a fan, Pat, I felt like that energy in the building was pretty heavily towards the Knights in that one.
Yeah, and the energy from their guys. I mean, it's interesting you brought that up because we talked about that. Sometimes, you see a team that's 0-5 and you can see they've kind of cracked or just here we go again.
Yeah.
And you didn't see that. Those kids fight. I mean, they fight for 40 minutes every game they played. And that's a credit to the program, obviously. There's just no they're coming. And so their energy, I thought that was impressive, especially looking back. You don't maybe appreciate it in real time, but like those kids, they just kept fighting and I guess I'm glad we could have made some people feel good that night. How about that? It just unfortunately wasn't the baby blue guys. So
It was a good game too. It was a great game. You led for a good chunk of that game, and I thought they had a really good finish. I like that Varnado kid is very talented. 6'6", kind of a 3-4 guy that's very athletic. McKenzie is a stud on both ends of the floor. I thought those two in particular kind of willed them to victory. And then the other guys are very good, but I thought it just got away from you over the course of about a 2-minute stretch of the game. And then you just couldn't get back the last 2 minutes of the game. Is that kind of what, because you were in good shape for, I don't know how many minutes you led. It felt to me like a pretty good portion of the game, though.
yeah, I think as I look back at it, one of those, however you want to phrase it, we probably made one or two too many mistakes or they made one or two more plays. I mean, however you want to slice it, and that ultimately was the difference. And I couldn't agree more. I mean, those two kids are good. I mean, they can
Yeah.
play, and they've got great pieces around them, and they've got length. Um, so they're good. I'd be shocked if that's their only win this year. I think they've got some more ahead of them. So
They've got some wins coming. I would
I think
agree.
so.
Yeah,
Yeah.
and it was a great game, and it was good to see both teams play that second game at the GLI. Your team here, I want to talk to you about your crew. Like I mentioned, I feel like they're just very balanced and very deep. Um, so Cooper Vaughn, obviously is a guy that gets a lot of pub as he should. He's a guy that's averaging 13 points, 2 rebounds. He's a 6'1" senior guard. Let's start with Cooper Vaughn. Talk a little bit, Pat, about kind of what he brings to your team.
Last year he led the country in 3-point field goal percentage.
It's
So
amazing.
he can really shoot it. As a matter of fact, his freshman year, this is not a joke. I had to go check and make sure he was going to class. That's how much he's in the gym. I mean, every time I'd walk by the gym, he's in there, and I honestly thought he was skipping class. So I mean, he just shoots it, and it's a weapon, and he hasn't quite got it going yet, but he will and he can. And even when he's not, he draws a lot of attention that frees some things up for other guys. So he's a great kid. He works at it and he can fill it up.
Is that amazing? Just the alignment between hard work and results. It seems just so too cliche, but like I remember back in the day, back in like when it was 1997 or whenever that was, we had a little freshman, Corey Kuhn, and every time I'd go to the Shirk Center to work out or I'd be back there late, like this kid would be all alone in the gym shooting. Like every time I walked in, and it sounds like Cooper Vaughn is the same way. And then you put him on the floor, and when he makes shots. Talk about like how much work, coach, that it takes to be a great player. I don't think everyone really understands that.
Yeah, and the other thing I would add is there's a plan. There's a purpose. So he kind of knows what he's going to do when he walks in, and he's not leaving until that gets done. And so I had him the other day. I just brought a couple freshmen down and said, all right, here we go. And instead of working out with them, I just had Cooper take him through so that they could kind of see,
Sure.
oh, this guy, he walked in here with a set plan and he's going to go through with it and he's not leaving until it's done. And so, yeah, it's not an accident when those guys, and we've all got them and we've all had them and then that's fun to see. That's part of the great part about coaching is when you watch that and then get to see it pay off, it's fun.
It is. It's good to see great things happen to people like that work hard. Another, you've got a very senior dominated team here. Ryan Thyssen is a 6'6" senior, kind of a wing player, guard forward, whatever we want to call him. 12 points, 5 rebounds, 2 assists. Talk about Ryan, if you would.
Yeah, I mean, he's been, I think, 3 times now an academic All-American. So he's one of those kids that just, that's kind of what our deal is about at Division III. Are those kids? He's going to be a doctor and he's going to be a good one. Same deal. He puts in the time. He works at it. Last year actually, to begin the year, he had a weird compartment syndrome in his calves. We thought he was going to be done playing basketball,
Wow.
and he's worked himself back. So he kind of had to relearn. He used to be really explosive. And he doesn't quite have that burst that he used to have. So he kind of had to relearn how he was going to figure things out. And he's smart enough and competitive enough that he has. And he's just kind of a rock for us. He's smart. He's ultra competitive, and just everything by the book. He's really kind of one of those coach's dream type kids.
Your third all conference guy, all MIAC guy coming back is Blake Berg. He's a senior, a 6'4" senior guard, currently averaging 11 points, 4 rebounds, and 1 assist. Talk about Blake Berg, if you will.
Yeah, Bird kind of sets the tone for us. I'd say. I mean, he's got a little bit of an edge, and sort of that attack, not back down mentality, which I think we feed off of at times. And he's continued to get better since he's been here. You probably saw a few. I mean, he's got a great burst, really athletic kid, and I think he maybe as much as anybody sets that tone of. You mentioned physicality, toughness. A lot of that I think Blake drives.
And after those guys, I think you've got, 6 other guys that are in this rotation. I believe it's a 9-man rotation, if I'm counting that right. And it really is, like that group after this, all averages between 5 and 7 points. They all come in. You never really feel any drop off or anything. Just maybe collectively talk about that next group of 6 guys that plays such a critical role for you.
Yeah, they're great. I mean, I think the hope is you mentioned no, see a drop off. At times they give us a burst. I mean, at
Yeah.
times they come in and they're playing better, and any of those guys could start. And those of us have been through it. You know how hard that can be when it's like I'm good enough to start, but I'm coming off the bench. And again, those guys, they just have bought in. They want to win. And if you're off the bench and you're in a game, whether it goes your favor or the other, you're probably down one rotation. You know what I mean? Like if you're subbing out at the end of the game because you're up big or down big, that group probably misses a couple extra cracks at it just because they didn't start. But I think their numbers could be higher, but they just have
Right.
they bought in, and it's a luxury to have, obviously.
Yeah, for sure that group of 6 outside of like Vaughn, Thyssen, and Berg, everyone below that, so to speak, they all could be, star players in the right situation. And it's great to see those situations where people accept their roles and they're part of a great team and a winning team. Defensively, you guys are really elite. Right now, your opponents are shooting .356 and your opponents are averaging 59 points a game. Just talk a little bit about the defensive mentality, because they clearly have bought into that and embraced that. And when you watch your team, you could watch your team for 2 minutes and say that's a great defensive team. Talk about that side of the ball, coach.
Yeah, I'm not sure we'd have said that a year ago. And I think, the way our year ended, we really had to kind of look back and come up with some answers as to how do we hopefully end on a better note. And I think the obvious was we defensively we weren't where we needed to be. So that was an area of emphasis. And I think our guy, again, they know that. I mean, this wasn't anything revolutionary. And I think that sort of resolve has carried over to the year to say, this has got to be a thing for us. And it's fortunate it has been. When we have not shot the ball well. Now, part of that's due to who we played. I mean, we've played good
Sure.
teams that can guard. But some of it, I think we'll get some looks that'll drop, but our defense has kept us in it, which I don't think we start this way a year ago at the level we were at defensively. So that's been a huge plus, and obviously, hopefully, that continues.
You mentioned the year not ending the way you wanted it to. Last year, the one that sticks out to me, what we 5 seasons ago now, is the COVID season, the one that shut down. Because for some reason I still remember the bracket, and it seemed like it was going to be the best like Sweet 16 of all time because you guys were sitting there about to play your conference rivals, St. Thomas. I think that was the bracket that matched up with Elmhurst and Pomona Pitzer. And on the other side of the bracket, you had all these cool games like Yeshiva was going to Randolph Macon and they were tied in with Mount Union. I'm just curious. I know that's been several years, but getting shut down like that, Pat, like getting shut down from continuing on, that must have been like brutal. Just talk about that, going back to March 14th of 2020.
Yeah, thanks for bringing that up. It was it's still, somewhere probably deep down haunts you. And we've had some tough losses in the tournament. Those are easier to take than that one, just because of the
Sure.
club. How good were you? We had a really good team. You do this long enough. How many of those teams do you get? Not a ton.
Right.
So yeah, that sort of what if, I think. But what are you gonna do, right? I mean,
Right.
it's the way it goes. But it was a fun group, and it does that one's. It's just that the lack of closure, I think, and there's 15 other teams that would probably echo that, I suspect, or coaches.
Yeah, that was going to be, yeah, for some reason, I still think about that sometimes. It's like, like WashU is going to North Central or, just all the matchups are really cool. So glad we're past all that. I had to ask you about that because it was on my mind. The MIAC, you guys don't do a preseason poll. Is that right? There's no poll?
There's no longer a poll. Yeah, I think this is year 2 or 3 of no polls. So
Honestly, it's probably a good thing. Some of these polls, I don't know. I think there's a lot of interesting voting in these polls for different reasons. So maybe you guys have it right and everyone else has it wrong. Last year, you guys went 18-2. Carleton goes 14-6. Gustavus goes 14-6. It's a good league. We all know it's a good league. Um, in terms of anyone you've had a chance to see on stream or anything like that this year, seems like Gustavus stands out to me as a team that's going to have a really good season. How do you look at the MIAC and kind of the teams that are going to be really challenging for that title?
yeah, it'll be interesting. I think a lot of the playoff teams, so our league, the top six get in the conference tournament. I think all six of us return a lot.
Yeah,
And then I think, some of the teams that missed out, have an influx of talent or have some back. So I think balance will be better this year than a year ago. And you mentioned Gustavus; they got a great group back. They'll be tough. Again, Carleton, same story.
yeah.
Um, Hamlin, so and all those teams return a lot. So it's probably hit rewind and here we go again.
And it's been a very balanced league. If you look at kind of who's won it, who's contended in it the last several years, it's really been a great league to follow. And I've had a chance to talk to a few of the coaches here on the QCast. So it's a league with great coaches. Um, just want a couple more things before we finish this off, just in terms of your kind of your program in general. I feel like you guys have just a very strong traditional program that has a great history behind it. You've got a great fan base. You have a great home crowd. You have a great group of people that follow you on the road places. Just talk a little bit as someone who played, someone who graduated from St. John's and now is the head coach. I think it's your 10th season. Just talk about the program in general for anyone that might not be familiar with the Johnnies.
Yeah, we're fortunate. We do have a really loyal alumni base and fan base, which is great. And they do come out and support. They travel pretty well. So I'm fortunate. And the guy before me, Jim Smith was the head coach here for 51 years.
Right.
And I think that really started this longevity. When you think about it, there's only 2 people in the world alive that have had my job,
That's
which is kind of
crazy.
crazy. So that started with Smitty because all of us are connected. I mean, you either played for me or you played for Jim Smith, if for the most part.
Sure.
So there's that connectivity that I think the stability allows guys to have a familiarity. There's always a friendly face within the program, and I think that helps foster that loyalty and teams or alums showing up to games, etc. So I was fortunate too. A lot of times when you get a job, you're taking over for somebody that got run out or it's a problem, and I got to inherit a pretty good group of guys and a strong program, which that it makes a big difference.
Was that tough though? Because I remember being around, being really close to Illinois Wesleyan there in Bloomington when Scott Trost took over for Denny Bridges. And I thought that was really hard on Scott. I felt like there was tons of pressure on him, whether it was self-imposed or other people. I mean, taking over for a guy that was there that long, that successful. I mean, you had to have felt that a little bit in those early years as you were trying to make your own way, didn't you, Pat?
Yeah, there's pros and cons, right? And when the guy's been there 50 years, 51 years, you do anything different, there's some, well, why are you doing that?
Right.
Well, what are we doing here?
Right.
The flip side though is it better work, because it forces you to make sure you're convicted about your decisions. So yeah, there's that. There's some added pressure. I mean, the old adage, never take a job following the guy they name the floor after.
Right.
And we're down on Jim Smith Court every day. So fortunately, he's and I don't know Coach Bridges, but my suspicion is he seems like a pretty good guy and pretty supportive, and that's how Smitty is.
Yeah.
I've never once felt that pressure from him, but certainly there's a standard and some expectations, and then anytime you change, hey, we've been doing this a long time, and we like how this has gone. You better know what you're doing. There's that for
Right.
sure, for
Yeah.
sure.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah. It's
probably rightfully so, though. I mean,
yeah.
yeah.
Right. A similar dynamic. I just that struck me as you were talking about that. Just a couple more things. One of the things I said after the games on Friday, we were having some beers afterwards, and I said, after seeing these teams, what would be cool if somehow we could like get a third game here and have St. John's play La Crosse. I go because such different games I just saw. Like St. John's just locked up Hope and La Crosse just shot the crap out of it. I'd love to like create a matchup. And then like Matt Snyder says, look, you dumbass, they play Wednesday. They actually have a game scheduled. So you have La Crosse coming up. Is it this Wednesday or it's soon, right?
Yeah,
This
yeah, Wednesday. Yeah, yes.
What an incredible game. I left there. I voted for both you and La Crosse in this top 25 ballot. I think most people will. I hope they do. What a great game. Is that at your place, Pat? Is that your place Wednesday?
Yeah, yeah. This year it's here. Yeah, they're good. I mean, they're really good. So it should be fun. Again, a great opportunity for our group. But I thought the same. I thought they looked they looked really good this weekend. Um, and so hopefully they don't look as good on Wednesday, but I suspect they will. They're tough. They're
They are.
tough.
I didn't know much about them this season. I really hadn't watched them until seeing them in person. And JT really he's got things going in a hurry there. Like he has a very versatile group. It's kind of like a version of you guys in that it's a lot of interchangeable parts and you don't always know who's who. It's just this guy comes in and he's good, and then this guy's good. They really have some offensive talent. They defend. So hey, I hope everyone watches that. I know it was one of the D3 Datacast games of the week coming up, but that's one of those, right, Pat? That's going to be a big result in when we get to late February and we get to brackets and selections. I mean, you and your guys know that like beating La Crosse on Wednesday would go a long way towards what you want to do this season, right?
Yeah, I mean that's a long ways away, but I would imagine a win Wednesday is better than a loss for sure.
For
So
sure. That's safe.
yeah, we're going to try. I can tell you that. Unfortunately, I think La Crosse will have something to do with it too, but it will be fun. I mean, it's they're good. I mean, it's a great challenge, and I think same with this past weekend. You play those teams; they're going to expose you, and you're going to learn about yourselves. And like today, we're playing, practicing based on Hope and Calvin.
Right.
They taught us a lot about some things we need to work on. And La Crosse is going to be the same. And then the hope is that gets you ready for conference play, so that you're a little more shored up and dialed in for what you're going to see in conference.
Yeah, that's a great one. So I encourage everyone to watch that one on Wednesday. You'll be getting ready for Thanksgiving. Pop on the Johnnies and the Eagles. It should be fantastic. Also, before we just talk final thoughts here, I got to plug the D3 Datacast guys. Zach and Matt have a new episode out today. They go through a full GLI recap. It's great. They do Matt's ballot, so Matt releases his top 25 ballot, and they do their picks of the week, their games of the week, all that stuff. So make sure to check out the Datacast. It's great. Pat, this has been a blast. It was nice to kind of finally meet you in person. And talk a little bit out there. I appreciate the gear that you guys gave me. I wear it with pride, and it was great to watch you guys play. I think you guys are fantastic, and we'll have a really big season. What would you leave the QCast viewers with? You'll have, of course, Johnny Nation tuning in, a lot of D3 people, Great Lakes Invitational fans. What would you leave us with today, Pat?
Yeah, we're excited. I appreciate obviously the platform you have and use for our level, and same with your Datacast guys. They got a shout out actually on our NABC Congress that
That's
I
awesome.
think they've gotten NPI figured out
Yeah.
better better than the NCAA maybe. So it's we're all in this kind of random cliche world of D3 basketball, and so it's cool to have it. We're so local and regionally based, and so when there's an opportunity, whether it's a Great Lakes Invite or stuff like this, or the Datacast guys to like get a little more familiar with
Yeah.
other great programs nationally, it just makes it's just fun because that hasn't always been the case in Division III, and I think it's starting to come together a little more where we're more familiar with each other, and that's in large part due to stuff like this. So thanks to that whole group that was out there, it's cool.
I was talking to Riley Zayas, who's 20 years old, and he's writing a book about Division III. So like he's got a lot of cool stuff going on. He's way up here, and he said, "So did you vote, Bob? Did you vote for the poll like 26 years ago when it first came out?" I go, "Yep, I was an original voter." He
Oh,
goes,
were
"How
you
did
really?
he go? Yeah, he goes, how did you guys vote in the poll back before streaming?" And I got to thinking about like we saw scores, and then Dave McHugh had Hoopsville, and we talk about it there. And Pat Coleman had some stuff going on, but I don't know, Pat, how the heck I don't know how we really submitted a credible ballot. How did I assess Whitman and Whitworth and Pomona Pitzer and Williams? I probably didn't do a very good job at it. And now to your point, look, we've got a lot of media. You've got d3hoops.com. You have what Dave McHugh does. You got some new people coming onto the scene like the Datacast guys and me. And so, hey, we're in a pretty good place in D3 exposure, and it's fun to follow along. So I really appreciate your time, Pat. This is a blast, and I wish you guys the best of luck this season. I really hope the Johnnies have a monster season.
Well, that makes two of us, and I appreciate you having me on. Thanks a lot.
Thanks, Pat. We'll talk soon. Okay.
You got it.
Thanks.